Today I'm going to be talking about Blonde is a Netflix movie that just came out like a couple of days ago, and Ana de Armas is playing one of the most iconic movie actresses that we have ever seen, and the plot for Blonde is pretty much this. A look at the rise to fame and the epic demise of actress Marilyn Monroe and one of the biggest movie stars in the world. Let's get into the good parts of this movie, and the first thing I would like to say is that this movie is very well shot. A lot of the shots in this movie are creative, very innovative, and honestly my jaw was on the floor with a lot of the amazing shots that were in this movie, and you can tell that a lot of the budget in this movie went to the cinematography. Another thing that I liked about this movie is Ana de Armas' performance. I thought she was amazing, and you could tell that she was really going for that Academy Award, that Best Actress Award. And honestly, although what I'm about to say after this is not as good as what I'm saying right now, I thought that her performance was really good, and she gave one of the best performances of the year. I don't know exactly what people are saying about her performance, but I personally thought that she did a really great job. Also, I'm not the biggest Marilyn Monroe fan, so a lot of the things that this movie may have incorporated that has nothing to do with Marilyn Monroe, I really didn't care about, since I was just judging the movie as a movie, not exactly about what they got right and what's accurate and what's not accurate. Another good thing that I would like to say about this movie is that early in the movie, I would say that there was this poly relationship that Marilyn Monroe has with these two other actors, and I actually thought that that was a really good relationship. Like, I genuinely felt like these people loved each other and cared about each other, while the other relationships in this movie, the chemistry just wasn't really there. Although I thought that Adrian Brody and Ana de Armas' chemistry was good, the other one, I honestly forgot what the character's name was. That's how much it didn't really do anything for me. Also, Evan Williams, I think his name is. He's one of the guys in the poly relationship. He was in a childhood show called Baxter, and it was one of my favorite shows as a kid. And I rewatched it like a couple of years ago just to see if it's good, and it's not that good. But in my heart, I still really enjoyed the show. Another thing that I liked about this movie is the first 15 minutes of this movie. The first 15-20 minutes of this movie was really well done, and it honestly feels like a completely different movie than the rest of the movie that we get. And what I mean by that is that we see why Marilyn Monroe, or at least this version of Marilyn Monroe, is the way that she is. She has an abusive mom and all types of stuff that happened in her life. And then eventually she gets sent to orphanage, and or she becomes an orphan. And then once she's about to go into the orphanage, the movie just skips like a whole bunch of years to the Marilyn Monroe that we are currently following. And I thought that I had a bit of a problem with that, and I'll talk about that later. But also, I thought that this first 15-20 minutes of the movie could have been a completely different movie. Alright, let's get into the bad parts of this movie. The first thing I have a problem with is that this movie is way too long. This movie is 2 hours and 30-something minutes if you don't count the credits, but with credits it's 47 minutes, and it does not need to be that long. There's a lot of scenes in this movie where like they could have cut out. Like, it has nothing to do with the movie. It's just there just to be there, and that really annoyed me. Another problem I had with this movie is the fact that, I usually don't use this term a lot, but this movie had a lot of, style over substance. Like I said in the beginning, this movie is shot very well, and I feel like a lot of the movie went towards cinematography instead of actual story, because once again, there's a lot of breathtaking shots, but in terms of the actual movie itself, there's really not much that it's trying to say. And one thing I will say that I also liked about the movie, before I continue with the bad parts, is that I liked how this movie depicted the way Marilyn Monroe slowly goes into her madness. Like, her mental health goes completely wrong by the end of the movie. And you see why in the first 15 minutes. But after that, you see her slowly losing her mind. And I thought the movie did a very good job of showing that part. The last bad thing that I'll say about this movie before I give my score is the fact that there's really not enough story that warrants the, 3-hour runtime that we get. It's one thing if there was a lot of story that needed to be told to give us that 3-hour runtime, but the fact that, the story itself is really simple to the point where it's pretty much just you're seeing this Marilyn Monroe slowly losing her mind and what caused that and what happened to her, like her being abused or her being like having sex with a higher up, and then how that kind of messes her up because maybe she thinks she's not talented, all stuff like that. But once again, that's a pretty simple plot when you really think about it, and that overall, because the movie is 3 hours long, it makes the movie very boring at times. She also has this like recurring thing. This is one of the themes of the movie or something. Whereas like Marilyn Monroe has father issues. Her father was never in her life. As a kid, she always thought, maybe he's gonna come back one day, and he never did. And spoilers once again, but at the end of the movie, one of the last shots is literally Marilyn Monroe in her like dream state or something, seeing her father. So once again, father issues, maybe that's the reason why she has like, a lot of sex with a lot of other men, and her relationship with men, and like she calls this a lot of the, her partner's daddy a lot, which by the way was crazy, but that's probably because she didn't have a father figure growing up, and maybe that was her way of having one. I don't know, maybe some psychologist could break that down, because I am not a psychologist and I'm not qualified to be one. Overall, guys, although Blonde had some of the best cinematography that I have seen all year, that didn't save it from the fact that it didn't have a good story to tell. And overall, I'm going to give it a 4 out of 10. And while I was watching the movie, there's an actor, you probably know him, Bruce Campbell. And I was watching his Reddit video that he had done for Ash vs. Evil Dead a couple of years ago. And he said something that, while I was watching Blonde, was the exact same thing that I was thinking.
Your script is like your blueprint for your building, and if your blueprint is pointed in a funny direction, that's the way your building is going to go. So if you have a script that is subpar, it's going to be a subpar movie.